Hello, Rachel.
Hello, Ryan.
How are you doing?
I'm fine.
Just fine. Is it that you're tied to a desk and you're feeling lost and alone and unsure of your place in the world?
I am going through a bit of an identity crisis.
An identity...
yes.
You're an explorer at heart. You should be out here with me wearing cowboy boots, looking over at the rim and seeing creepy Cthulhian nightmares in space with our buddy Keffa.
Yes.
Come on, Rachel, wake up, get real, as David Lynch would say, who we may talk about in this episode actually at some point. So we are the YumYumPodcast, a podcast that is going through each episode of Babylon 5 one at a time from a rewatch point of view, which does mean we are Rachel, what are we?
Spoiler-filled podcast.
Spoilers, shh, don't tell anyone, okay? But if you haven't seen the show before, if you have not seen Babylon 5, we recommend you watch it before listening to us because we'll get into the nitty-gritty details of the whole picture, and that does even include details for the episode we will be discussing, which we'll get into in a second, but we are called Yum Yum Podcast because of what reason, Rachel? Why Yum Yum?
The iconic line from Star Trek Discovery.
Yeah.
Yum Yum was uttered and our lives and the universe were changed forever.
What's the context, though? So in Discovery, Star Trek Discovery is a modern television show that's currently on.
Yes.
And this is a line, Yum Yum. What do you mean Yum Yum was said
A
in...
character.
That's a great
asked.
description. A character. Just a character. Not a specific character. A character.
Yeah,
Go on.
a character was asked if they were out for going off and jauntily murdering the villain of the season.
Yeah.
And her reply was to flick her hair and say, yum, yum.
Don't forget lick her lips sexily, might I add. And we, as you said, we were forever changed, and we wanted to name our podcast after it to remind everybody to use it as our rating system, to ask the question of when we did do Discovery, we would bring it up, but now we're doing Babylon 5, I bring this up, which is who in this episode, a distant star, would have said yum yum? Who would have said it? It's a tough pick.
I don't know. Nobody had full YYE yum yum energy.
No one had the YYE, Yum Yum energy. I make the bold claim. I think this is one of the firsts for us, and this is a legitimate. I think nobody had YYE in this episode. I don't think anyone came close to muttering yum yum out loud. I give it to
Yourself?
I guess myself for watching the episode.
Okay.
I don't know who to give it to, honestly, but this is a YYE-less episode, which gives us everything we need to say about it, but we will go into it. The plot, according to the DVD summary for this one, goes as such. So we are looking at Season 2, Episode 4, A Distant Star, which according to the DVD goes as such. No ship lost in hyperspace has ever been recovered, but Sheridan is determined to try because his longtime friend, Captain Jack Maynard, Russ Tamblyn.
He's stinky.
Well, he's stinky, but that's his nickname. We aren't allowed to give him a nickname because I'm reading a formal description on the DVD. Russ Tamblyn is at the helm of the distressed explorer vessel. So this is an early Season 2 episode. We are still warming up to the new season, the new cast of characters of Sheridan and of Warren Keffer and our old characters. We're still familiarizing ourselves with them yet again. And I want to get into our histories and relationship with this episode. If it's all right with you, I'd like to leap in there first.
Go for it.
I do not like this episode. I think it is extremely
is it just 'cause it's
forgettable.
Low on YYE.
It's low on YYE. It lacks Walker Smith That's its big fault. No Walker Smith. I don't know if I can enjoy it.
But it does have kefir.
It does have kefir, so that all...
Kefir's back.
Kefir's back. You know what? Can we give it up for kefir?
No.
Okay, no, we're not going to give it up for kefir. Okay.
No.
Kefir's... Okay, we'll get to kefir later.
Request permission to dock.
Permission granted. Welcome home.
Thank you, sir.
I have never enjoyed this episode. I've always found it extremely dull. I've found it extremely boring. Nothing really lingers from it for me in terms of the main plot. There are some comedic asides that I think
moments in this episode.
Overall,
that are okay.
This is a snooze fest. It is forgettable, but it isn't offensive in its mediocrity like Survivors is to me. It exists. This is a classic filler episode. We have to get to the places we have to get to. We have to have 22 episodes a season. This has never been one that I think of. I only think of it in terms of what are some episodes of B5 that you have a hard time remembering, and I go, and I think, and I go, oh, there was that episode where Warren Kefir saw a shadow ship, and that is how bland this story is to me, where in my brain, whenever I recall of this episode, the detail I think of is this is a Warren Kefir story, because the one thing that truly lands from the main narrative is Warren Kefir starting his ongoing journey of hunting down the shadow ships. That is what lingers. Although I do remember the Bunyakota and the food plan, I don't think of it from this episode. I just think of it exists in B5, those things. But when you have to try and recall a detail, I think of Warren Kefir being prevalent here. But then we just watched the episode and he has maybe less than 10 lines of dialogue. Warren Kefir is not at all a key player in this. He does have his moment, but that's it.
There.
It's a moment. But what about you? What's been your relationship, your journey, your history with A Distant Star?
I always think about this episode and I'm like, oh, it has what? It's the one with that thing, and I like those things, but they're in this episode?
Yeah.
Okay, I'll take your word for it, Ryan. You remember them better than I do. That's the kind of way that I treat this episode, of like, it's not a bad episode.
No.
It's not quite fine. It's definitely not good.
Yeah.
But it's just there. And it plods along. It's a relatively nice, cruisy ride.
Yeah.
Throughout. And
so this one has also been forgettable, bland, mediocre for you?
Dull is the word that I would use for it.
Has it ever changed on your watchings of it? Like, do you remember what it was that first time? Have you ever grown in more disdain for it or more joy? Has it ever really shifted? Because we've discussed that with these episodes that we find bland, that we've had tides with these. We've come in and out, and I've never changed my rhythm with this one.
There is something that's changed.
Yeah.
Because this only happened on the first watch.
Okay.
I thought we knew the squadron commander already and I'd forgotten him. But no, he was just thrown in for this episode.
We have a Patreon in which we have a group Discord in which we get to discuss many things on there, and people have talked to us on there in the past about this episode and about their liking of it, and I reacted very negatively to that because
they
to me...
They appreciate things about this episode.
Differently to us.
I appreciate parts of this episode.
Yes, but
it's just never comes together for me.
But we've talked about this on the podcast before. Babylon 5 has a dedicated fan base, but in the real world, it's very small to me. I've never met B5 fans outside of myself or people I've given that experience to or who have given it to me. So often we have the same consensus on things. So often we all usually agree which ones are the shitty episodes or the shitty characters or the shitty plot points. But that's the thing about the internet. That's the thing about encountering other people out there in the wild. They don't have that. So there are people out there who say, I like this episode. I don't think it's boring. And I have to stop myself from reacting like I do with my group of people who have seen this with a consensus of stopping myself going, what the fuck are you talking about? This episode's dull as dishwater. And I want to come in going, okay, there are people out there, people in our Patreon and people out there who find this episode to be more enjoyable than myself. They like certain things like the rescue mission of this or the spaceship designs or even how Warren Keffer is implemented in this story or so on and so forth.
I did appreciate the design of the Explorer ship more, and I enjoyed seeing a little bit more of a taste of the shadow ship.
Oh, of course. But I'm disappointed to say that although I walked in with even higher wantings to enjoy this episode, I did not. Yeah. I found it extremely dull. And I keep saying it's dull, boring, tedious, it's filler.
Here's how I want to explain it. Even though I enjoy parts of this episode, and maybe I enjoyed or appreciated slightly different parts, it never moves the needle more towards me liking the episode as a whole.
No.
I really do take those moments or scenes on their own. And I think, like I sort of mentioned, this episode never comes together for me. It weirdly boilerplate. It's just serviceable. It's moving along. I never get invested.
Yeah.
I'm always hyper aware that I'm watching an episode of television, especially when it comes to like the moments before the ad breaks in this episode.
Oh my God, they're so prevalent with their music stings and the big gotcha cliffhanger lines. I'm going to use one of your famous kind of analogies or whatever. This isn't the what was it, the Paralympics you said one time for Star Trek Discovery or whichever, the Winter Olympics or a slip and slide. What I'm going to use to describe this episode is your neighbor's cooking, where you smell your neighbor's cooking and it activates something within you, but it's no substitution for actually eating a meal. That's how I would describe this, is there's whiffs of things here, but there's no meal in this episode.
It does lack substance. Like this, you can see and feel the skeleton of this episode.
Yeah.
It doesn't have anything that's meaty.
No meat, low fat, lots of vegetables.
It's rabbit food.
Well, it's only for a little while, Captain. We'll get those 10 pounds off in no time.
Who's we?
I want to talk about the elephant in the room. We've purposely avoided talking about it because it isn't fun to talk about, and with the episodes we have had, there's been more things to discuss, but since this episode we agree is fairly light and mediocre and there's not a lot of moving parts, I think it's time to talk about Warren Keffer properly. Let's go into our journeys and our histories and understanding of Warren Keffer, as well as why he is in this series. So, Rachel, talk me through what it was like for you. You walked into season 2. You knew that there would be some new characters. Yeah. You knew that Sheridan was going to be here. You knew that one or two of the other characters would leave at some point. I didn't specify who.
No.
There would be some recasts or shifts around the place and so on and so forth. You had seen the DVD covers of all the seasons, so you knew that some people were going to stay, some people were going to come in.
Yeah.
But tell me about Kef. What it was like for you that first time.
I watched like the first episode.
Mm-hmm.
Saw him in the titles, and I was like, "Oh, okay, new person."
Warren Keffer.
Immediately, I was just like, what purpose do you serve here?
Who are you?
Like, I was weirdly suspicious and aggravated by his existence.
Really?
Before I'd even watched the episode. Because I was just like, you're doing something here. And it just the way that he's in the credits alone, I was like, you don't fit here.
He's like this smiling guy who's like, hey, I'm in the show too, guys.
Yeah, I'm like, you don't belong here. Like, just that alone put me off kilter. And then, like, we watched maybe an episode or two where he appears, and you're like...
Well, this is the second episode where he appears, right? Because he wasn't in Geometry of Shadows, was he?
Oh, fuck.
Or Revelations? I don't think he was properly in those.
Like, he may have had a line or two.
He's only in 6 episodes of the season in the end. But as you're saying, we watched an episode or 2 more with him.
Yeah, and then you were like, it's okay that you don't like him. He doesn't stick around for long. And I was like, yes!
Yeah.
I don't have to give a shit about this stupid character.
You don't have to invest in Warren Keffer.
Yes.
And
you gave me permission to dislike him, but also to not put energy into disliking him.
Yeah. I'm curious of how longtime fans and people in general think about that, because everyone has their different ways of viewing, and with new people viewing it, like, do you tell them nothing? Do you tell them little things? I've often went by the coda of try not to tell too much. There are some key things like letting
you waited.
And I let some people know. Like, it depends.
After you let me know, was when you also told me the history of this character and why he's there.
Yes,
and how, like, I was sort of on the money with feeling like he was out of place.
Exactly. And I want to touch upon that in 1 second. But I often say, like, I go off the people I know. Like, if I don't know people, then I'm not going to tell them how to watch the show other than just watch it. Watch it, don't look anything up, just watch it, trust in it. That's what I say. But with people like you and former housemate Mark and Bartek and whatever, I engage people and I go, okay, this person doesn't need to know that Sinclair leaves at this point, if at all. And this person should know that Warren Keffer is someone you don't need to invest in. And I think it's a case by case. But I told you and I tell people because I've seen people waste so much time aggravating themselves thinking, oh, I've got to put some effort into this because he must matter, because usually people matter in B5. Warren Keffer is designed not to really matter, because my history with Warren Keffer was as yours. I was confused. I didn't know who this guy was. I wasted my time trying to put in the effort because I'm used to people coming into shows randomly. Not everyone who comes into a season always gets introduced in the first episode cleanly. That's fine. And especially in this, where Sheridan had to be introduced primarily, that's fine. We can wait an episode or 2 for Keffer. So I wasted my time trying to invest in him because there is nothing to invest in. He has no character. There's nothing to him. He serves one function in the end, and even then that could have been done by anyone or even an object. So he really serves no function. But what I came to understand at a certain point was, and this is what I believe to be the narrative here, is that in the interim of season 1, season 2, the network finally came in and said, we would like these things done for the show. They gave notes, they gave demands, and this is one of those where we want Warren Keffer,
we want a pilot.
We want a young hotshot pilot guy who can get into spaceship fights and get with the girls.
Attractive pilot.
Your typical sci-fi bland character man. We want that in the show.
And he is bland.
And he is bland. And
he is in the show.
This further went into my disdain for Sheridan initially, because as we've talked about in previous episodes, I didn't know what to make of the casting change, because when I watched it, we didn't know why there was a casting change. There were several rumors flying around, several pieces of several ideas flying around, and now we know why. But Warren Keffer was an example of, like, a solidified example of that fear I had of the network came in and said, you got to shift these things around, because that is what Keffer is. He is a studio network note that reduces the quality of the show. Every time Keffer's here, you can't help but think of asking yourself the questions of, who is Keffer? Why is he here? What is he about? Where is Keffer? That's all, something you ask yourself a lot, is where is this character? No, you know what we never ask? How is Keffer? No one ever asks how Keffer is. Do you?
No,
No,
I don't care.
You don't. You know, because you don't care. I've never met a person in my life who actually likes Warren Keffer. I've met people online.
Unironically.
No. I've met people online who ironically like Keffer, but then there are one or two people who seem to genuinely like Keffer, but when I ask or dig or inquire, it's more they could have made this a character thing rather than the actual character that's in the show. Because guess what? There is no character. He is a guy.
I'm just trying to be a guy.
If season 2 has a problem, it is Warren Keffer. Season 1 had other problems, but season 2, it has shitty episodes, it has shitty writing, but its main problem, its blemish, its wart, is Warren Keffer.
Yeah.
Don't you agree?
Yeah, I do. A weird thing that's been getting under my skin that's related to the Keffer stuff is I do find it odd. Like, in B5, they make a big deal about budgets and tech.
Yeah.
But why don't they have dash cams?
Rachel, they can't even afford to let the command staff have their own quarters at a certain point and they make them rent them. There's a whole bunch of bullshit like that some of it makes sense, some of it doesn't.
Yeah. No, but I fully admit that that's a weird nitpick that I'm having on this particular watch through of Babylon 5.
Yes.
I'm like, why does nobody... Like,
well,
it just feels like, well...
Why are they
Well, they can't yet.
Why
they can't get proof of the shadows, and if they had a camera on the ship,
well, he uses his camera later.
Data.
He uses it later.
Yeah, but he uses it later because you have to wait.
Yes, because we have to wait to the season 2 finale. Rachel, one of the things that we want to talk about with Keffer is something that we're unsure of because we haven't seen any interviews with this actor.
Keffer is a bit of a stretch, but...
No, but the actor of Warren Keffer.
Yes, we were interested in how much the actor knew about the role, because it feels to us like we read his performance like he didn't know that this was what was going to happen. He just thought that he
was a series regular.
A series regular role on this sci-fi show and got to, like...
Be a member of the cast.
Yeah. Gets to be a hotshot pilot. And that he was not aware that this was something that the network was kind of forcing in, and that the creator of the show was just like, fuck this.
JMS is infamous for being very spiteful and petty when it comes to interference of his creative projects from networks. He did this with the Ghostbusters animated show he worked on, She-Ra, all of this stuff. He's walked away from projects because of his artistic integrity, but he could not walk away from B5. It's his baby. So he had to bite the bullet here, and
he had to work within the system, Sinclair style.
So instead of letting them get what they want, he was like, okay, we'll put him in the credits. And you know what? I'm going to have him in the show, but he had him in the least amount of episodes one physically could, which is 6 episodes. And he doesn't even try to introduce this character properly. It is so blatant that this is a character that's been forcibly added into the show.
Shoehorned is a word that comes to mind.
He's a glitch.
Because then he disappears and he's never even really referred to. Like, the Doctor from The Gathering
Gets
more mentions.
But they
than
also
Kefir.
treat it, but see, JMS doesn't even put in the legwork because they treat it like, oh, Kefir's always been here. Don't we all love Kefir? It immediately tips off the audience that this character isn't going to be good. And I often think that's funny, and because then he kills him and then we never hear about him again. That's really funny to me. It's funny. But on a real world level, for the actor who played Warren Kefir, is that how, if he was not aware, is that cruel? Because I am an actor and there's a whole series of things you have to go through. You know, you have to have an agent, you have to do these casting calls and auditions, and then you get the part, and you have to make a schedule, and you have to get costume fitting and makeup, and you all of these things. And if you are sold that you are going to be a regular character on the show, you're in the opening credits of this television series, and you are actually there to be a character that gets brutally killed off, and every part of the creative team making this hates this character's existence, i.e. hates you, I don't know if that's really great for the guy. I've never heard his takes on this. I'd love to know, because he is a blight on the Babylon 5 story. No one likes Warren Kefir. Everyone in the fandom hates Warren Kefir, or has disdain for him, or dislikes him. And is that fair to the actor? To give this guy that burden, because this is a cult classic sci-fi show.
He's fine as Kefir. Like,
because how could he be better?
Yeah, like, he's not given much, but
Anything.
He tries to sell it the best that he can, but it just feels like, you know, all of these other actors would have been given like this wealth of knowledge because JMS had a huge show Bible.
Yeah, and the actors didn't have
but
grasp, but they were given wealth of material.
Given wealth of material. That's what I was getting at.
Yeah.
And since Kefir is nothing, he can't draw on any of that depth.
And they don't, and because JMS doesn't want him in the show, he gives him nothing. So the actor can only
really
give us so much in a performance.
We didn't even get an explanation for who the hologram woman was.
Oh, his girlfriend. Yeah. We never hear about that character again.
No.
When he dies, does she mourn for Kefir? Again, does anyone mourn for Kefir? Does anyone feel for Kefir?
Does anybody in the command staff worry about informing her or his parents?
And again, I have no clue, but I have always felt tremendous sadness and sympathy on behalf of this actor, because I don't think that he was aware. I don't know. I don't think they needed to tell him. They probably told him, you're here for this many episodes, and that's it. And maybe he didn't even think of himself as a series regular. Yet again, he must, because they have him in the credits. There's a whole bunch of behind the, legalities and paperwork that goes into that and pay stuff. So I've always felt bad for him on that level, but I also feel bad for him on the terms of he is a part of a sci-fi show, a cult sci-fi show, which has a dedicated fan base who hates his character. And sometimes people have a very hard time separating character from actor and him. And I wonder how that is for his self-esteem, because we know actors like Will Wheaton, who have gotten a lot, and even Ethan Phillips, who played Neelix, have talked about in the past of how much it does hurt their feelings that a whole group of fans, major amounts of the fans, hate
something that
their
anybody
character.
deserves. Nobody deserves that treatment.
And the difference between Wesley Crusher...
in, like, this context.
The difference between Wesley Crusher and Neelix is the writing staff genuinely thought those characters would work. And they failed, and they failed gloriously. And I'm not going to defend those characters. I don't like them. But they had artistic merit with them, and they failed, and their fans hated those characters.
More people genuinely like Neelix, so...
While Kefir, he was designed to be hated. That actor was given a lump of shit.
Yeah.
And How many
asked
years
to carry it.
How many years has it been since the premiere episode, and he's still hated this character because there is no other alternative. You can't help but dislike this character because that's what he is by design.
The best you can be about Kefir is indifferent.
Indifferent. Yeah, I don't know. I've often wondered about how that is, and I wanted to kind of discuss it here because the usual thing that everyone talks about with Warren Kefir is it's easy to shit on Warren Kefir and to talk about how much of an insert character he's forced in, blah, blah, blah. But I don't know. I think it is important to note that this is a guy, this is a real dude who had to spend the time with this role. He had to go to the auditions probably or read the script, learn the line. This is time and energy put in. And this was years ago now, but all of these years later, new fans and old fans, new viewers and old, treat Kefir and this guy the same way, which is with disdain or apathy. And I don't think that's a fair thing to put on him.
When it came through the first time, it was on a right angle to the gate's position. And once I figured that out, I just struck out in what seemed like the right direction. As for what it was, I don't know.
There are also lots of other things that are just in this episode and
some positive things
reoccur.
Yeah.
But aren't really plots.
Oh, you want to talk about Franklin's food plan, huh? That gag? It's not a plot. That's not a plot. It's just a gag that recurs throughout the episode, but it's not a plot. Look, I like this. I think it's cute.
It's cute.
JMS objects to cute things, but he has a lot of them in his scripts, and I know this isn't his script, but in his shows and in his projects.
Cute moments are needed.
I like this. It's not a plot. It has no bearing on anything. It is there to be cute.
Franklin has a bit of an arc.
Yeah, look, there's no substance to this other than it's funny that they go on diets, and it's funny in the boilerplate level. This is a sitcom plot.
Yeah.
This is a 2.5 Men plot.
Especially
this is Alan
like
puts them on a diet, and then everybody objects, but it's like, Charlie, your diet's cocaine, and Half Man, your diet isn't cocaine, so swap your diets around. Alan, are you going to do that? No way, look at me, I'm healthy. And
the scene where they're swapping the plates and then get busted is just so lame.
Oh, I love that scene, but it is
I enjoy it,
but it belongs in any other show.
Yeah,
and the humor of B5 isn't specifically unique, but it definitely has its voice. JMS himself, when he writes scripts, this is the first script in season 2 that's not written by him, and you feel it. You feel it. He has a certain comedic sensibility that just is it rings out in a different way than the other writers do, and maybe he punched this up in there, but there's nothing to say here other than it's cute, it's funny, it's nothing that we haven't seen before, but isn't it kind of funny that Ivanova needs to eat more food, and the expanding borders and all of that, and Sheridan eats rabbit food, and Garibaldi has to
being creepy.
Franklin being a creep, and then he busts them, and they swap their food around. Oh boy! All they needed was the comedy music, but Chris Frank wasn't allowed to do the comedy music anymore. He was told not to.
Not for this one.
Not for this. It needed the comedy music, but I like it. It's just, I can't defend it, and I can't really critique or analyze it, because what is there to say other than it fills time?
Yeah.
That's what it is. It's something to fill the time. A bit of levity, a bit of cuteness here.
Yeah, and it's just like, these are all things that make sense to these characters. You know, Garibaldi is Italian, and he likes
Italian food. And he makes it sound very tasty.
Which is heavy on carbs and fat and salt.
Oh, anchovies. And oil. My arteries are hardening just looking at it, being in the same room with it. So I guess that's where we transition in talking about Garibaldi's plot. Can I just say, Babylon 5 is a tonally wild series.
Wild.
And it works and it doesn't. We've talked about that. And in this episode, it's fucking wild to me that the main plot will be like, my friend is lost in hyperspace and our main pilot guy fucking died. And then it will hard cut to Garibaldi being like, have you got me oil and me stuff for my Bunyakota? And then the guy who gets it for him is like, oh, geez, Garibaldi.
Gotta pay through the nose for that.
It's like, this is the same episode.
Yes.
This is the same episode. It's a totally wild thing, but let's explain the Bunyakota thing. Garibaldi wants to eat this special type of Italian fondue and or dip, he describes it. It's his birthday, and we get this dispensed throughout the episode. First, he just wants to eat it.
Yeah.
First, he just wants to eat the things he wants to eat.
I'm really excited. I am looking forward to making this dish.
But he's on a food plan. And Franklin says, no, you can't do this. I'm the chief medical officer here, and I'm not allowing you to ruin your health by doing this.
You will recover faster
From being
if
shot in the
you
back.
adjust your
Food plan.
diet.
Not diet. Franklin objects to it being called a diet. It's a food plan.
Yes, but in general, like what you eat generally is your diet.
So, Rachel,
and I'm
are you
referring
going to
to
argue
that kind of
Are you
diet, not the adjustments that it doesn't fucking
What I was
matter.
going to say is, are you going to argue with Dr. Franklin, the guy who's a god because he's a doctor? Are you going to argue with him?
Yeah,
he's got
'cause
the blood of a
doesn't-
child on his hands. Are you going to argue? Going to one-on-one with that guy?
Yeah, I will.
Yeah, you will.
Especially because it feels completely unnecessary. And that's kind of the whole point. Because it's just like he's demanding that these people change their diets.
Because it's funny.
Because it's funny.
That's it.
But it's just so useless.
Oh, yeah, because we need it so that Garibaldi can be cornered and do these things. And then the real reason
an
is...
extra reason why it matters that he's trying to get all these ingredients and that he's making this particular dish.
So that way we can have an emotional payoff to him doing something that's rather silly. And we've had that before with Garibaldi in comedic sense, in manners and serious sense, like the comedic payoff to the second favorite thing in the universe, where that was a running gag, a running plot point, you could say, within the first episode of this series. And then the reveal is it's Duck Dodgers, and it made you warm and endear to him. We talked about that. This is a warming and endearing thing to me because it's super specific. It introduced me to a food that I've never heard of before, and I want to have, and I've wanted to have, and it gives you an emotional moment from Garibaldi. Jerry Doyle plays it well, where the reveal is that his father would make this type of food for him on his birthday. It was his way of saying I love you because he couldn't say it with his words.
Which is a really cute story.
Yeah, and it's played well, and it's good, but I think why I like it is because it's super specific. The notion of Garibaldi, the security chief...
It matters that it's Garibaldi. It
Oh,
matters
yeah,
that it's
in
season
line with his
2
character.
Garibaldi.
It's in line with his character. It will be something that will ring throughout the show, like his dealings with the Postal Service later, and how that is a thing that makes that even funnier and better. But it is super, super specific of the food, but also seeing Garibaldi, the security chief, running around trying to get all of these different ingredients whilst hiding from his peers about this. It feels right in line with his character. And as mediocre and bland as this episode is, and we forget that this story's in this episode, when you think of Garibaldi, be honest, this is up
One
there.
of the things. One of the things that I think of.
One of the things you think of. It is memorable.
Like, it is mainly the end of the arc with him getting busted by Franklin and then eating the dish with Franklin.
Yeah, because we like their friendship, which will be super important going forward because they are both addicts dealing with their addictions, and we'll see them butt heads over that. So we need these moments to humanize them, so that way when they have their clashing, it hits harder. But if we didn't have this moment, it wouldn't hit as hard later. I wouldn't say that it is a substantive plot, but it is in a way because
it's a building block.
It's we keep saying it. It's nice.
Yeah.
And we need the nice moments so that the hard-hitting moments hit all the more.
Yeah. This is small by comparison, but I really love how Garibaldi gets to be super Garibaldi. Like he goes
he's in full Garibaldi mode.
He goes full Garibaldi mode, and I think my favorite moment of that is the wait till you see what's for dessert.
Oh, and he's not allowed to have it because he's been a bad boy.
Yeah, Franklin's like, oh, I didn't authorize that. And he's like, well, you don't get any then. But what is it? Well, you're not getting any, so you don't need to know.
You know, and we don't get to find out.
No.
Can we talk about Bunyakota? Did you know of this before this episode? Was this a thing that you were aware of?
No.
I was not aware of this.
This is the only context, time, whatever, that I've heard of this dish.
And as we know, context
and
is for
in
kings.
relation to this episode.
Yeah.
And how amazing they make this dish sound.
We talked about in season 1 with a guest that this is a show where people eat food. And not only do they eat food, they do it in a way and they talk about it and they describe it and they chomp down into it where you can taste it. You can taste how delicious this fondue is. I've always wanted to try it. I've always wanted to, but living in a small rural country town, it's hard to get these ingredients and you want to go to a place where they make it properly because
you want to get this at an Italian restaurant.
You want Garibaldi to give it to you.
You want the experience.
Yeah. You want Garibaldi to serve it up to you and have a good chuckle and the acting, say what you will about the actors in this show, but you cannot look me in the eyes truthfully and tell me that they did not nail that scene in terms of making it look fucking tasty.
So fucking
Richard
tasty.
Biggs and Jerry Doyle fucking go ham in that scene in a way that's perfect because I am salivating when watching it. It is... We have to praise any piece of media that can communicate that sense of taste of food because I rarely get affected by that in movies and shows where they do the food porn and they glorify food and they get into it and people have that. I don't have that as much, but this is an example where I really do. And I've always wanted to try Bunyakota. So let's talk about our tragic...
But I don't want to talk about it.
Yeah, we will then. We will talk about the tragedy of one of my birthdays. So, a few years back now, I had a birthday. My birthday's in September, so it's like a busy time in our lives. Father's Day and my father's actual birthday and school's wrapping up. Usually the school term's kind of finishing around that time and so on and so forth. There's all these things. Now our wedding anniversary is in September, but this was before then. And, I was just swamped and I did not want to do anything for my birthday. I was just like, I just want to do nothing. I just want to spend time doing nothing. And this was in the early stages still of our relationship. We'd been in a relationship for a few years, but Rachel was still at that point where it's like, you didn't understand some aspects of me when it was like, when I say I don't want to do anything, I mean it. But you were all, no, Ryan, you want to do something.
You didn't want to spend money.
And you're like, but also you were like, come on, Ryan, you got to think about what you want to do for your birthday. You haven't given it thought. And you twisted and twisted and twisted and twisted my arm. We had arguments over it. I didn't want to do anything, but you twisted my arm and you gave me the responsibility to think of what to do on my birthday when the whole thing was I didn't want to do anything, but you wanted to do something. And so I had to think about it so much and I was getting further and further away from what I had wanted in the first place. But then I locked in on something and said, hey, we're watching B5. What about we find a place that actually serves this meal that Garibaldi speaks of? So we looked into it. We found a place. They served it as a breakfast brunch type deal. We had to get up super early to travel across the city to go get it. And so we locked it in. I was excited. I was keen. I was ready to go. I was all on board for it. We wake up in the morning and Rachel didn't want to go. Rachel was all, oh, nah, it's too early. I don't want to do it. You were right in the first place, Ryan. We shouldn't do anything. You did the most annoying trick in the book in a relationship in which you forced me to do something, you made me get invested in a thing I didn't want to do, and then you backpedaled and made it so that we couldn't do the thing because I wasn't just going to go by myself on my birthday, so we didn't get it. And then we just never went to that place. And then we looked into it again because this was like one of the only places in Melbourne that did this specifically.
Was the only place that we could find where it was like
listed
on their website, on their menu.
Yes, and then when we were keen to do it again, the place had shut down and there was no place in Melbourne we could find that could do it. So that was the tragic story of how I almost had Bunyakota. Now, before this podcast recording, Rachel knew that we were going to tell this story and thought, let's redeem ourselves by making our own version of it. Get some of the ingredients, look up how Garibaldi did it. We did our own little version at home, and I got to say, it was very nice. I enjoyed it very much. I was a bit surprised because it's a stinking hot day, so I wasn't too sure I was going to go eating this, but it was lovely. I enjoyed it, and I am keen to have it again. And no disrespect to you, Rachel, you made it, but I am also keen to see, like, to go to a restaurant to see how it's like done in that professional manner.
Yeah.
Because we did it our makeshift self, and we didn't have like the thing that they were eating it out of. We didn't.
We didn't have like
the fondue pot.
Fondue pot to keep it warm. I just had it in like a
little bowl after you heated it up. But
yeah,
it still was
and also
very.
I didn't simmer it for ages.
Was it yum yum?
It was yum yum.
It was yum yum. Garibaldi. He's onto something this time. Good on you, Garibaldi. Yeah, can we give it up to Garibaldi for a good food recommendation? You did it, Garibaldi. Bravo.
Oh, but it's almost time for me to make my favorite meal, Bunyakota.
What is it?
It's kind of an Italian fondue. So you start off with a pint of olive oil, extra virgin, yeah. And then you melt about a quarter pound of butter into it. Oh, man. Then you take garlic, lots and lots of garlic, and anchovies.
Anchovies? Forget it. Too much salt and no bread.
Come on, Doc. No salt, no bread, no anchovies, no Bunyakota.
Tough.
One of the... Is it fair to say it's a B plot in the episode? Or a plot? Not the A plot. Is Delenn is having a crisis of purpose and identity and place.
I think plot's too much.
Lingering idea? The smell of your neighbor's cooking? Delenn is...
Scenes that happen.
Delenn is suffering the repercussions of her transition from her own people, as well as the humans. We see Captain Jack Maynard come onto the station. He sees her. He doesn't know how to react to her. And we find out that her own people don't know what to make of her. They confront her. They talk to her. They say, hey, are you actually a representative of us? Because we don't know if you are a Minbari. We don't know if we should follow you. We don't know if you are an actual leader for us, because we know the Minbari to be a very purist, elitist. They have caste systems. They're all about spiritual, cultural, and racial purity. So Delenn's change up, especially changing into the race that... the Minbari do have bad blood with, the race that they just were in a war with, causes a lot of tension and friction, and Delenn is left wondering where she's supposed to be in her culture in this episode, because she tries to do the typical season 1, I'm Delenn of the Grey Council attitude of, you just have to accept what I say, but the guy just does not, and her people will not just conform the way that they used to, because they don't acknowledge her as someone who can do that anymore.
Understanding is not required when, Minbari leader is talking, but we're questioning whether you're Minbari and one of us anymore. So that line isn't going to work for you here.
Yeah. And it all culminates where she's pushing it to the side. And this is an issue she's been pushing to the side when it comes to these repercussions from the very beginning. She's disregarded the Grey Council's concerns over this because prophecy and fate is more important than her own well-being when it comes to this, because it does have to affect her on an emotional level.
The prophecy will attend to itself. She must
be a part of it.
She must attend to the prophecy, not it'll happen on its own.
Yeah, she's important to it. And but she has to suffer on an emotional level from this, or else she would become a boring protagonist character. And she's being cold and to this. She's trying to repress and push it away. But when she talks to Franklin, when he's doing the exam on her, she's very irritable, and he digs deep into it. He asks her, how are her own people dealing with this? And she actually vocalizes it. She actually talks out loud about it. And you can see with Mira Furlan's performance, who is fantastic as usual, even though her hair is buck wild in this episode. They don't know what to do with it here. They still haven't figured out how to style it. She does a great job communicating with her face, the realization that this is something that she actually has to deal with, whether it is externally via doing something like meeting up with the Grey Council or meeting up with her own people, or having a deeper understanding within her own self. What did you think about that? Because it is hard to say that this is a plot because it is so lacking in screen time and supremely internal. Like, a lot of it is carried on the weight of the actress rather than the weight of the script.
One particular section, few lines that Delenn has that I was just kind of heartbroken for her in a weird way, which is when she's having that meeting with the Minbari representative that, like, clearly, like, the other Minbari on the station have sent him in to have a chat to Delenn. And he's just like, well, like, we can't really take your word for this. If you don't object, we will send somebody to the Grey Council for them to explain, clarify, like, confirm that, like, you are still Minbari and that, like, you are still our ambassador, because if you're not Minbari,
then what are
you doing here? And also, what are you just in general? And I really loved the way that Mira, like, the take that they used of her being like, no, I don't object. And, like, there's a lot behind those words of, like, well, even if she did, this Minbari doesn't see her authority, so that would just make her weaker. It's the fact that she's no longer a part of the Grey Council.
Yeah.
And she's not used to not having that, I don't think. Like, she feels like if she uses these lines, they'll fall into it. They'll fall into line, I mean.
Yeah.
And the way there's a depth in her performance of that particular line that I really appreciated on this watch.
Why isn't this more of a story in the episode? Why isn't this fleshed out more? Why isn't there more time and scenes dedicated to this? Why isn't this an episode, a clear A-B story in which the theme is exploration and identity? Why isn't Sheridan's insecurity about his place in the show and in the station and in the world mirrored with a plot in which Delenn is going through the same thing? Why is this so minimal? Why is there the need for the Garibaldi stuff or the need for the food plant stuff? Why can't they make it as simple as that? Because it isn't too hard to do.
No, but it's not what we get, and it's not one of those episodes where it feels like it's worth going and diving into that.
No, they didn't try.
No,
I don't know
like,
if it
they
even
didn't
occurred
try
to them, because isn't that obvious?
Yeah.
Isn't it obvious? Because it all culminates with Delenn and Sheridan meeting up in the garden, and they solve each other's arc and theme in the episode, in which they engage with one another and they gave each other an understanding of themselves and of each other.
That scene
the
So
We Are Star
much.
stuff.
Yeah.
Well, the Carl Sagan quoting scene. Yeah, it is a good scene, and it is a good seed in the blossoming of their relationship as the series goes along. They have good chemistry, they as characters and as actors, but it almost, if anything, to me, it doesn't work because the script hasn't earned it, but it works because the actors have earned it.
Yeah.
That's it. This is an episode where, when it comes to that stuff, this is the work of the actors bringing it rather than the script itself.
And I like all of the actors, like of our main cast that I hear, are doing a really solid job. I kept on just being like, I fucking love Ivanova.
Yeah.
Especially when Sheridan's like, Delenn explains that we all have a special connection with the universe. And Ivana's like, don't we all?
Don't we all? Don't we all? Yeah. It's just lacking. This needs to be more, but that was never its intention. This is an episode where it's disparate elements that are here.
The molecules of your body are the same molecules that make up this station, and the nebula outside that burn inside the stars themselves. We are star stuff. We are the universe made manifest, trying to figure itself out. But as we have both learned, sometimes the universe requires a change of perspective.
I don't know if it's fair to say, but is JMS, because he was writing those first 3 episodes, is he just the best writer in Babylon 5? We know him to eventually take over the entire show, but is his supreme understanding of the characters just too far ahead of every other writer to make it even fair to them?
I don't think JMS knew how to bring anybody in the way that would be needed for somebody to be on par with him in terms of writing the script. I think that it's definitely possible. Like, my mind immediately goes to the writers of Breaking Bad and Better Call Saul and the way that their writers' room works.
Yeah.
Where it is a collective effort and using the strengths of the individual writers, but that they have this process that really is them collectively designing the show and designing each season and, got working backwards from there. And I don't think JMS's style, particularly at this time,
is collaborative
in the way that it would need to be for that to work.
Hence it becomes he writes the entire show on his own after a certain point. Which is like, it's a logical progression that eventually he will just have to do it all himself, which is fucking insane, by the way.
It is always gonna be janky and uneven.
Yeah.
With the way that it's presented, because I don't feel like any of the guest spot writers, including this one, like this one's a good example of this.
Which I do believe is DC Fontana again.
They don't get the world of Babylon 5 in the depth that JMS does. And
all the characters.
Like, there feels like it's an insurmountable gap because nobody has the skills or the time to bridge that gap, because we know that JMS was working on developing the idea for this series for a long fucking time.
He had it supremely mapped out. Why I ask this is, we've had a lot of layered, very mature, very worldly understandings of grief and of personal traumas and all of these things that have warmed us up to Sheridan as a character. And this is yet supposed to be another example of warming the audience up to Sheridan by showing that he has insecurities, he isn't sure of his place in the world. Is this right? Is the show acknowledging that he is this new guy yet again? And it isn't as if the script isn't putting in the effort. We're not going to say that. It is putting in the effort. There's lots of things it tackles. It's lots of things that are brought up and mentioned and talked about, but it lacks that.
But we don't feel it.
It lacks that poeticism of his conversation with his sister about how he's lost his wife and how he has to stop himself from mentioning, because those were so real. It doesn't have that here. This feels... It works. It's serviceable. It's workmanlike. It does the job, but it doesn't go. But it doesn't go beyond. It doesn't. It doesn't tug at my heartstrings or intellectually that Sheridan is struggling with an identity crisis. Because also, I find him to be supremely immature and childish in this episode when it comes to his identity crisis.
He throws a tantrum at his desk. That's what he does. And as somebody who
throws tantrums at desks. Yeah.
Just in general as an adult.
Yeah.
I'm like, yeah, that's a tantrum.
It's a tantrum.
And I get why you're doing it, and I like that Ivanova has to remind you to be an adult.
I want to say that it's not as if the writers here, or the writer, I should say, so off base with Sheridan as a character. They know what he is, but they just don't have that unique flavor that JMS has that makes us like the characters as much as we do. And this entire plot here about him wanting to be the captain that he used to be, but also wanting to be this role, and the ship lost in space and Captain Maynard are representations of this journey where he's rescuing a part of himself, the part of himself from the past, the part of himself he could be, and in so doing, he is re-establishing and reaffirming and understanding his role now. And that is great when we talk about it like that, but it just doesn't hit those beats as strongly as the previous episodes have when it comes to these personal arcs of our characters.
That's not the way that I've thought about it, but I that makes a lot of sense.
Yeah.
I always just kind of thought of it as Sheridan proving to himself that he doesn't have to be out on the rim to be pushing boundaries and to be doing new things and to be exploring. And that it's a shift, and it's not one that he wanted. He makes it very clear in this episode that he never wants or wanted to be a politician.
Yeah.
And that's what they've made him into, and that he's extremely resentful of that.
But he's being,
for a lot of the.
But he's being petty because that's not
he's being
all he
immature about it.
Because that's not that's not all he is.
No.
And he knows that by the end of the episode.
Yeah. It's just like, I get to be more than one thing. And yeah, this isn't what I thought my life was going to look like, but that doesn't mean that it doesn't have what I want, because it kind of goes back. He's reminded of the reasons why he was excited about the job, the stuff that he listed when he first kind of got on to Babylon 5. That he's like, the president asked me to do this. And I wasn't sure at first, but I get to do this and this and this, and it has this advantage.
Yeah, but the great thing here, and this is a great thing of, he's finally hit the wall of truth for himself, which is all those things he's mentioned in this episode and several other episodes are the things you tell yourself for when you are forced into a position and you have to make the best of it. Oh, there's these benefits and these things and these things and these things. But if that's
not that bad.
But that's not what
I get orange
But that's not what he
juice.
wants. That's not who he is. And he has to come to terms with that here in this episode. And again, we're talking about it, and this sounds super compelling. And for people, this is, to me, it is fine. It just, you know what it lacks? I don't know how to describe it, but in the other episodes, there's those moments, even to give Larry DiTillio, another writer of B5 credit, even TKO for fuck's sake of all episodes, there's those moments where a character will say something in their conflict that makes me go, oh, yeah, that hit home. You know? Like when Ivanova in TKO talks about how she can grieve the way she chooses, that the way she does or doesn't grieve is her choice, and that is fine. And you go, you know what? Yeah. There's no moment like that here for me. There's no moment where he makes a case like that, or Delenn makes a case like that, or Maynard makes a case like that. It is, oh yes, on an intellectual level, the ship represents, but I don't feel anything here. And that's a big disappointment, is I wish I could, but I don't feel any of his anguish or his insecurities. I recognize them. I can go, there they are, but I don't feel it.
I mean, I am constantly sandbagged, swamped, drowned and snowed under by nothing but trivia. I mean, look at this desk. I can't find a thing on it. You know me. Is this me? Huh?
One of the major things that we keep on going back to about this episode is how it has stuff that we like, just not a lot of it or not enough of it in the right places.
Correct.
And I think that applies to the actor that we've picked for the spotlight as well.
Who we haven't really even talked about their character or them enough. We are talking about who, Rachel?
Russ Tamblyn, who plays Jack Maynard.
Captain Jack Maynard. Not to get confused with Captain Jack later in B5 and Captain Jack from
He's
Doctor
a Maynard
Who,
that doesn't get the nickname Ducky.
Ah, Ducky was in this show. Ducky from NCIS. He was in this show. So we're talking about Russ Tamblyn. Let's talk about his performance, what we think of him in this episode, what we know him from, all of this stuff. So when I watched this episode, I watched it before I had watched Twin Peaks, which is what I primarily know him from. So I had no attachment, no knowledge of his existence outside of this episode when I grew up with Babylon 5. And I had no opinion on this character or this performance. He is one of the many Earth Force people that is in the show. Say what you will.
He blipped.
Say what you will about Gregory Martin's performance in Eyes, but I fucking remember Ari Benzane in comparison. But that's different. He's a villain. This guy isn't. He's a guy. He's an old mentor. He's a friend. He's a buddy. And I've never been impressed by this performance. I've never cared. I've never been bothered. And then now watching it and reviewing it and talking about it.
That's Jacoby!
That's Dr. Jacoby. And it makes it hurt all the more that his performance to me is very lackluster.
Full.
He's very lackluster to me. And I feel as if he is not really great with the material in terms of, I don't know if he's often played military figures in his career, but I don't get the inkling here. He never comes across like he is an actual military guy. No. He comes across as an actor man who's here for a job.
And there are certain scenes in particular where it's just like, it feels like he's got these lines memorized and has to go in this certain way.
Oh, yeah.
For him to remember all of it.
Oh, of course. I don't like his performance all that much here, and I think it also comes down to the wasted potential of Russ Tamblyn. He plays eccentric, weird characters a lot of the time. I mean, he's Dr. Jacoby for a reason, and he is presented as an eccentric, weird character. He wears cowboy boots. He allegedly swears all the time.
Distinctive.
He knows a lot about Sheridan and his past, but it never culminates to all that much.
No.
You wish that he was in more scenes where you could actually explore any of this, but even then, he's in the right amount of scenes, but there's just not that much to him. He's presented on the exterior with a wackier personality than what's actually given in the script. And Russ Tamblyn isn't going full crazy mode Russ Tamblyn to bring the level of energy that the other actors are bringing to their roles in spite of the script. He is being burdened by the weakness of the script. He isn't bringing that that light to it that he does with many other roles.
Two things. I want to bring up how he does look so much better by comparison when you get that scene with his bridge officer and everything's on fire.
Oh, that guy's at an 11, energy-wise. He's going for it. He's having a ball.
He is right over there with that lady from the first episode of this season.
Where you don't know what the fuck they were going for?
She was going for it.
I hope they got married. The actors or the characters. Had some fucking terrible child actors.
What's our flight status?
Power's down 30%. We're flying blind. After we jumped, the fusion reactor spiked when it came back online. The system wasn't ready to handle it. The EMP blocked the entire tracking system.
Meaning we've lost the lock-on signal from the jump gate.
Yes, sir. Without it, we can't find our way into hyperspace.
And the other thing that I wanted to bring up is that like, this episode as a whole never brings me in.
Oh, God, no.
I never feel like I'm in the story or on a journey. I always am like, yeah, I'm watching a show. Yes, that's the sting for the ad break. Yay. And another part of that distance that keeps me from the episode is they just keep telling us that they're really close and that they're really old friends.
I had Walker Smith flashbacks.
And
I had Walker Smith flashbacks. It was fucking nightmarish.
I get that that's the way that people act like that. Like, I've had many moments with you and with friends from high school where we've had that kind of tete-a-tete that they have at Earhart's where it's just like, oh, I'm referring to this story.
We're friends.
Maybe we could tell them that. But I have this story, so if you tell that one, I get to tell this one. Oh, no, I didn't say anything.
I don't know. It made me think of the In-Betweeners where they're like, friend. He's fine, but let's talk about what we know him from. Is Twin Peaks.
It's Twin Peaks. It's Jacoby.
I love him in Twin
Shovel
Peaks.
yourself out of
the
that
shit. We've referenced that in pretty much every single season 2 episode we've done for no apparent reason. It's not like we were secretly building it up so that this episode happens.
No.
He's just come up a lot that moment. The golden shovels have come up.
It's a good line.
It's a great journey for his character.
Yeah.
I love Dr. Jacoby. He's one of my favorite Twin Peaks characters because he's a piece of shit. He's weird. But it all comes together because of Russ Tamblyn's performance, which again,
he gets to go full Russ.
I believe that he wasn't supposed to be a series regular, but he just has he has a unique charm to him that made him come back and come back.
He was there in the pilot,
and they
didn't get rid of him.
He doesn't bring that here, unfortunately.
No.
Which is, look, I'm not saying I want to see this character again, but I want to have a great guest star performance, and he doesn't give it to us. It's mediocre. It's forgettable. The novelty comes from that's Dr. Jacoby from Twin Peaks in B5.
Russ seems weirdly indifferent about the role.
Yeah, which is a bummer because he's a pro. He's been in the industry since he's a child. He's had a lifelong friendship with Dean Stockwell to talk about the the David Lynch connections there, where Dean got a job on June, and then eventually on Blue Velvet, he introduced David Lynch to Russ Tamblyn at that Blue Velvet party, and then Russ got the job on Twin Peaks. It's all really cool. They both were in Quantum Leap together at one point. Like, it's awesome.
Because they met on at least Russ's first film.
Yes.
Which was in 1948.
Amazing.
So he's about 16 because he was born in 1934.
Right.
And he was an uncredited classmate in The Boy with the Green Hair.
And Dean Stockwell, a.k.a. Al from Quantum Leap, was the boy with the green hair in The Boy with the Green Hair.
And then with his Rusty.
Oh, he's Rusty back then, was he?
Yeah, until like
Clark
52,
Griswold's kid?
53. He was
Rusty Griswold?
listed under Rusty Tamblyn.
Okay, fair.
He landed the role of the kid from Cleveland.
Ah, he was the kid from Cleveland.
Yeah.
There you go. And he's done a plethora of things. Tom Thumb.
Did a lot of musicals.
Oh, yes. West Side Story. We should mention that...
he was the original riff.
And he went on to be in Twin Peaks, which also had the guy, Ben Horn, who was also in West Side Story. He was like one of the main guys.
He was also in a Quentin Tarantino film. Do you remember which one?
Russ. He was in Django Unchained.
Yes.
The gunfight, I think.
He goes for it.
He goes for it there. And yeah, we like him. We've seen him in a plethora. He's a prolific actor.
You mentioned the Quantum Leap episode.
Yes.
But I do want to acknowledge specifically what episode he was in. Do you remember?
I do. But you should tell us all, to remind us all of what a great episode that is.
So Russ is Bert.
Yeah.
Bert Glasserman.
Mm-hmm.
And he's in the episode where Sam leaps into a rabbi.
And the cold open is him saying "Oy vey" instead of "Oh boy." One of the greatest subversions of expectations in that show is him going "Oy vey." It's one of those where you clap when you see it happen. You go, "Fuck yeah, you did it! You did it!" The episode doesn't need to do anything more.
Oy vey, I'm the rabbi.
One of the things that's interesting too to note is, he's a bit of a heartthrob. I mean, he was in West Side Story. He was Riff.
Yeah.
You look at him here, you don't think, oh, look at him.
No.
I mean, when I think of him as a creep because he's Dr. Jacoby with his big curly hair and his weird glasses, and he's probably fucking a 16-year-old girl.
I do find him oddly sexy.
Like character of Dr. Jacoby. What?
Russ.
You find him oddly sexy in this?
Yeah, in general.
Oh. Should I leave the room so that you and Russ can have a bit of private time? No. This is shocking. What? I've never heard this.
You know this.
Are you saying you want to fuck Dr. Jacoby?
No.
I'm sorry. Are you saying you want to fuck Captain Jack Maynard? And in his boots? He never takes his boots off. That's an Inner Space reference for those fans out there. Robert Picardo never takes his boots off. Sock gap. That's a coupling reference. We're in full form. What? You find him attractive, huh?
Moving on.
No, moving in and up and down. What?
In 1969.
Oh, 69. Is that what you want to do with Russ? Breakfast for two.
As anchor.
Oh, he was an anchor, like a sea anchor?
No,
or a news anchor?
Anchor was the name of his character.
Oh, okay.
He was
He anchored himself in your port. This is going to be how this goes now.
Satan.
You can't just...
Sadists.
Oh, is that the film?
Was the title of that film.
Ah, so you and him get into some BDSM, huh? You and Russ. I'm sorry. You can't just casually... You can't just casually come onto the pod, say to me, your husband, right in my eyes, that you have a thing for Russ Tamblyn, even him older. I'm shocked and appalled and turned on. Because, I mean, it's not every day that your wife tells you that
Do you think he's an ugly man?
Oh, yeah. Oh, fuck yeah.
Okay.
Fuck, I mean, did you see him?
I don't think he's an attractive.
He's shoveling his way out of the shit.
I just think that there's something sexy about that man, okay?
That's a spotlight. Would you give him a yum yum? As a man?
I wanted to give a fun fact about him first.
Okay, that's a yes, by the way. Go on, what's your fun fact? I'm sorry to interrupt. I'm sorry. I'm just blown away by all of this. Overwhelmed.
Well, there was that time that you took leave on Mars and that dancer, as I recall.
Captain Sheridan,
Yes, Captain Maynard.
July 12th, 2253.
Oh? Forget I said anything.
So, in 1957, he was in a film called Peyton Place.
Was he Peyton?
Peyton Place is the name of the street that everybody lived on. I don't know.
Is he the place?
No.
This is what it's like living with me.
It was a film series and a soap opera. I don't know which one came first.
Probably the film.
But he earned a Oscar nomination for Best Supporting Actor. So as of recording this, he's the earliest surviving Best Supporting Actor nominee because he was nominated in 1957 and is still
alive
with us. So he was 23 when he got nominated for an Oscar.
I didn't realize he got nominated for an Oscar.
Yeah. Somebody
That's
else
crazy.
from the same film also got nominated in that category.
Dean Stockwell also got nominated for an Oscar at one point, right before he did Quantum Leap. Interesting. I didn't realize that. So what you're saying is, since he's still alive, that means he's the oldest, not oldest person, but like he. Timeline
He's had
wise,
the title of Oscar nominee for Best Supporting Actor for the longest time.
Right, and then when he dies, I wonder who gets it next. The other guy from that film, if they're still around. That'd be interesting.
I don't know.
So that's it. The episode itself. What would you rate a distant star? Yum being bad or yum yum being good. That's our rating system. Don't complain. There's no half yums.
We already declared that it lacked YYE, so it's a yum. Yeah. It's not a shock.
I am shocked still by the Russ Tamblyn revelation, but it is not.
Get over it.
Never. And it is not going to be a shock to anyone that this is a yum.
Yeah.
That is enough of that. Let's hear about what we will be talking about next time on Babylon 5.
On the next Babylon 5.
We're looking at Episode 5, The Long Dark. What a great title. And the DVD description says this is the plot. A drifting, century-old spacecraft carries a crew person, Anne-Marie Johnson, in hibernetic sleep. And something else, a phantom-like spaceling that a self-styled prophet, Dwight Schultz, calls a soldier of darkness. Interesting description of that episode. It's weird that they don't have it written down as Franklin is a creep over and over and over again. But we'll give our thoughts on that next time. So in the interim, people, make sure to give that episode a watch. Give yourself a viewing of it so you're all ready to go. You can follow us on the social media platforms. We're on all of them: Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, Reddit, Tumblr, TikTok, so on and so forth. All of them up and down under YumYumPodcast or YumYumPod. All of this is in the description of the episode.
Access in that description.
If you want to shoot us a message directly, you can email us over at
yumyumpod@gmail.com. And we mentioned this a few times, but we do have a Patreon.
Oh, yes.
Where you can join that Discord and tell us how we're wrong about upcoming episodes.
Or you can be able to access exclusive content on there. We have our monthly show in which...
there's a big backlog.
There's a huge backlog. We've done the Star Trek movies. We're doing the X-Men movies currently. We're going through the best and worst rated episodes of Star Trek. We are giving our thoughts on various pieces of media every 2 weeks, whether they're movies, shows, video games, podcasts. Come on over if you have the means financially, or if you have the incentive. Come on over, join the fun, get get some more yum yum content into your veins, into your ears, into your mouth. That is it, Rachel. Now, Jakar was not in this.
Was not here.
He was not here. We cried, we mourned, we lit a plethora of candles. I don't know what a group of candles are called. I don't know if they have a name. We lit a murder of candles. And he did not say the phrase.
In
but
a thing, maybe a candelabra.
Oh, that's it. It's a candelabra. There was a whole candelabra of candles we lit. There was a whole menorah. And because what? It makes sense for this show. They do like menorahs in this show.
Yeah.
Right? I don't know why you're giving me this look of glare, but Jakar was not here to say good eating to you, but Rachel?
I've got a bean to go flick, but good evening to you.
Bean to go flick.
Good eating to you, Ryan.
A bean to go flick.